The unexpected signal. It was a quiet evening on Earth when something unexpected happened. The world was going about its usual routine. People were working, shopping, and relaxing in the comfort of their homes. The stars in the night sky twinkled above, seemingly untouched by the busy planet below, but in one small corner of space, something was stirring. An alien signal, unlike anything humanity had ever encountered, was suddenly intercepted. The signal was faint at first, almost unnoticeable. It was nothing more than a soft whisper lost among the cosmic noise, but the scientists at the International Space Command (ISC) caught it. For years, they had been listening to space, waiting for signs of extraterrestrial life. They had found nothing, not even the slightest hint, so when this signal appeared, it was nothing short of a miracle, or so it seemed. At first, the team assumed it was just another glitch, a random burst of static, easily dismissed. But the signal didn't fade away. It lingered, it repeated, it was a pattern, and patterns, as every scientist knew, were not a coincidence. After a few hours of careful analysis, the team confirmed what they feared. This was no ordinary signal, this was someone trying to reach out. The message itself was encrypted. The technology that had sent it was beyond anything Earth had ever seen, yet somehow, it was clear. The message wasn't a random set of numbers or strange symbols, it was a distress call. A call for help. An SOS. In a dimly lit control room, the team of experts sat in stunned silence as the message flashed across the screens. "We need your help. We are in danger. Please respond." The words were simple, yet the implications were enormous. This wasn't a prank or a hoax. This was an alien race, desperate for assistance. The question that followed was inevitable. Who were they? Where were they from? Why had they waited so long to reach out to humanity? As the ISC team scrambled to decode the message, news of the discovery quickly spread to the highest levels of government. The United Nations was notified, world leaders were briefed. The message had reached Earth, and now the world was facing a decision it never expected to make, a decision that would change everything. The first reactions were skeptical. Some dismissed it as a hoax, others feared it was a trap. What if this was just a trick to lure humanity into a false sense of security? What if the aliens weren't seeking help, but preparing for an invasion? The more the message was analyzed, the more questions piled up. Why hadn't they contacted Earth before? Why choose now? And most importantly, why choose humanity? But despite the fear and confusion, one thing became clear: Earth had to respond. The message wasn't just a signal, it was a plea for help. And it couldn't be ignored. For hours, world leaders debated the next move. The military was on high alert, ready to mobilize, but some leaders, including the President of the United States, argued that they needed more information. They couldn't just jump into action based on a mysterious signal. They needed to understand the nature of the alien threat, or if there was even a threat at all. In the end, the decision was made to send a small exploratory mission to investigate. A team of astronauts and scientists was quickly assembled, chosen for their experience and knowledge of space exploration. Their mission was simple: go to the location the aliens had provided in their message, and see what they could find. As the team prepared for launch, the rest of the world watched. Some were hopeful, believing that this could be the beginning of a new era of peace and cooperation with an alien civilization. Others were terrified, fearing the unknown and what might happen if things went wrong. The tension in the air was thick, and no one knew what the future held. The day of the launch arrived, and the world held its breath. The spacecraft, a sleek, advanced vessel built with the latest technology, soared into the sky, leaving Earth behind. As it entered deep space, the crew aboard the ship had no idea what they would find. They were heading into the unknown, into a region of space where no human had ever been before. The aliens' message had led them here, but what awaited them was a mystery. Back on Earth, the ISC team continued to analyze the message, working tirelessly to decode the remaining fragments. The message had mentioned something about danger, but what that danger was, no one knew. The team hoped that the exploratory mission would shed some light on this alien race and their situation. Hours turned into days, and still, the spacecraft had not returned. News outlets covered the story non-stop, and the world waited in anticipation. What had they found? Were the aliens really in danger, or had humanity made a terrible mistake by reaching out? As the mission continued, the world's fears only grew. The unknown stretched out before them like a dark abyss, and with every passing minute, the question loomed larger: would humanity's first contact with an alien species be their salvation or their doom? But there was no turning back now. The fleet was on its way, and no one could predict what would happen next. The decision to ACTA letters, the hours turned into days. The world's anxiety only grew. The SOS from the alien race was not just a signal, it was a challenge. For the first time in human history, Humanity was faced with an undeniable connection to a species beyond the stars. But the question that weighed on everyone's mind was simple: what should Earth do now? In the United Nations headquarters, the leaders of the world met in a secure, high-tech conference room. The air was thick with tension. Everyone understood the gravity of the situation. For years, humanity had dreamt of making contact with alien life, but now that it was happening, the reality was far more terrifying than they had imagined. The message, though urgent, was still vague. The alien race had claimed to be in danger, but danger from whom or what? There were no details. No answers, just a plea for help. We can't just sit here doing nothing. President Sarah Thompson of the United States said, her voice stern and unwavering, this could be our only chance to make an ally in the stars. What if these aliens are the key to humanity's survival in a galaxy full of unknowns? Her words were met with mixed reactions. While some world leaders nodded in agreement, others were far more skeptical. The representative from China, Zhou Wei, stood up next. How can we be so sure? What if it's a trap? What if these aliens are not in danger but trying to lure us into a false sense of security? He slammed his fist on the table, his face flushed with frustration. We cannot risk everything on a single message. We need more information before we act. A heated debate followed. Some argued for caution, advocating for a stronger military presence around Earth, ready to protect humanity from an unknown enemy. Others insisted that the only way forward was through exploration and diplomacy, emphasizing that humanity couldn't afford to pass up the opportunity for cooperation with an advanced species. As the debate raged on, the team at the International Space Command (ISC) worked tirelessly to analyze the signal. Despite the skepticism of many world leaders, one thing was undeniable: the technology behind the SOS was advanced beyond anything Earth had ever encountered. If the aliens were lying, they had the power to deceive with a precision that no human race could achieve. We've been analyzing the signal's source, Dr. Elena Roberts, the lead scientist at ISC, said into a microphone. The technology used to send this SOS isn't anything we've seen before. It's far beyond our current understanding. If it's a hoax, then it's the most elaborate hoax in human history. The room fell silent as the implications of her statement sank in. If the aliens could send such a complex and advanced signal, what else could they be capable of? Could they truly be as advanced as the message suggested? After hours of discussion, President Thompson made a bold decision. We can't afford to waste time. We have no choice but to send a mission, a small exploratory fleet, to investigate further. If we wait too long, we might lose our chance to make contact, or worse, we might be caught off guard by an enemy we never saw coming. With that decision, the wheels were set in motion. The United Nations authorized the launch of a fleet of advanced warships, spacecraft capable of not only long-distance travel, but of defending Earth in case the aliens turned hostile. It was the first time humanity was putting its best ships and soldiers into space, and the world held its breath as the countdown began. But there were risks involved. The fleet, though equipped for defense, was still untested in the vast, hostile expanse of deep space. They were traveling into the unknown, not just to make first contact with an alien species, but to decide the future of humanity's place in the galaxy. The fleet commander, Admiral Robert Hayes, stood before the soldiers and crew, preparing them for the journey ahead. He knew the weight of the decision, the responsibility that rested on his shoulders. He was about to lead humanity's first expedition into the unknown. This is a dangerous mission, he said, his voice steady yet full of determination. But if we succeed, it could mean the start of a new era for Earth. We will act as ambassadors of humanity. We will show the galaxy that Earth is a force to be reckoned with. As the crew lined up for the launch, the whole world watched. Every major news network was covering the event. The public had been anxiously waiting for a response, and now, as the fleet prepared for liftoff, the entire planet felt like it was holding its breath. The ships, sleek and powerful, were ready to leave Earth's atmosphere. They were equipped with state-of-the-art weapons, communications systems, and medical facilities. The mission would take them far beyond the edge of the solar system, to the coordinates where the alien SOS had originated. The countdown began. 10, 9, 8. As the final seconds ticked down, the world waited for what would happen next. The future of Earth depended on this mission. It wasn't just about exploring the stars, it was about surviving whatever came next. 3, 2, 1. The ships roared to life, lifting off from Earth's surface and soaring into the unknown. The fleet left the atmosphere, heading toward the stars at faster-than-light speeds. It would take days, maybe weeks, before they reached their destination, but the journey had begun. Back on Earth, people stood in front of their televisions, holding their breath as the fleet disappeared into the vastness of space. The whole world was watching, but nobody knew what to expect. Would humanity find an ally, or had they just sent their best and brightest into the jaws of an unknown enemy as the fleet raced through space. The ISE continued to monitor the situation. The signal was still out there, faint but persistent. Earth's fate rested in the hands of the brave men and women now aboard the fleet. The truth was waiting to be uncovered, but would it be the truth humanity was hoping for? The decision had been made, and now there was no turning back. The fleet of doomed departs as the fleet sped farther from Earth. The vastness of space began to feel even more daunting. For the crew aboard the fleet, every passing minute was a step into the unknown. Their mission was clear: reach the source of the SOS and determine whether the aliens truly needed help or if they were walking into a deadly trap. No one knew what lay ahead, and each crew member carried the weight of humanity's hopes on their shoulders. Admiral Robert Hayes stood at the helm of the flagship Valor, a massive warship designed to defend Earth from any threat. As the commander of the fleet, Hayes knew that the odds were against them. They were heading into uncharted territory, surrounded by the unknown. The last thing humanity needed was to find an enemy lurking in the depths of space, ready to strike. Yet, despite the danger, he couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. This was humanity's first real attempt at reaching out beyond the stars, and he was leading it. "Commander, we've crossed the edge of the solar system. The stars are different out here," said Lieutenant Sarah Monroe, the fleet's navigation officer. As she stared at the vast expanse of space ahead, her voice, though steady, betrayed the unease that was building in the pit of her stomach. The sheer emptiness of space was overwhelming. Hayes nodded grimly. "It's a long way from home now. No turning back." The fleet, comprised of a dozen warships, each equipped with advanced weapons and defensive systems, moved in perfect formation. Their mission was to investigate, to assess, and, if necessary, to protect Earth, but every ship carried the same unspoken question: would they make it back? As the fleet ventured deeper into space, strange anomalies began to appear. It started with small glitches in the communications systems, static, faint, random bursts of interference. At first, it was dismissed as nothing more than the usual space weather, but when the disruptions started to happen more frequently, anxiety spread among the crew. They had been warned that space could be unpredictable, but this felt different. "Something's not right," Lieutenant Monroe said, her fingers rapidly typing at her console. "We're picking up strange signals. They're not from the source of the SOS, but they're coming from somewhere near our path. They're faint, but we can't ignore them." The entire command center fell silent. The crew members exchanged uneasy glances. Was it a sign that they were being watched, or was it just an unfortunate coincidence? As the seconds ticked by, the tension in the room grew. "Keep monitoring the signals," Hayes ordered. "Report any changes immediately." The fleet pushed on, its ships gliding through the endless darkness. The anomalies continued to grow, becoming harder to dismiss. The signal interference wasn't random, it seemed to follow them like a shadow. The crew aboard each ship felt the weight of the unknown pressing in on them. Were they being followed? Was someone or something waiting for them to make a mistake? Just as the fleet reached the outer rim of the galaxy, a new signal emerged on their scanners. It wasn't like the others. This one was loud, clear, and powerful. It was coming from the same general direction as the SOS. It seemed to have a pattern. But there was something else, something chilling about it. "It's a warning, Lieutenant," Monroe whispered, her eyes wide with fear. "But it's in a language we can't understand. It's not like the SOS." A cold shiver ran down Admiral Hayes' spine. The crew had been prepared for a peaceful first contact, but now it seemed they were encountering something far darker. The warning sounded ominous, like a threat from beyond the stars. Whatever they were about to find, it wasn't going to be simple. Suddenly, without warning, the fleet's lead ship, Valor, jerked violently, as if something had struck it. The lights flickered and the crew was thrown from their seats. Panic spread through the command deck as alarms blared. "What happened?" Hayes shouted as he regained his balance, his heart pounding in his chest. "It's an energy surge." Lieutenant Monroe screamed, her face pale. "We're being attacked. Something just hit us from behind. I can't trace the source." The ships in the fleet immediately went into defensive positions, turrets swiveled, and shields powered up as the crews braced for impact. The fleet had been prepared for anything, but this was something different. The attack was fast, precise, and invisible. No enemy ships were visible on the scanners, yet the fleet was under fire. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers," Hayes barked. "Get us out of here, now." The ships scattered in every direction, trying to avoid further damage, yet, the more they moved, the more they were hit. Each strike felt like a punch to the gut. The fleet was under attack, but by what and from where? Suddenly, a massive burst of light appeared ahead. It was so bright that it momentarily blinded the crew. As the light faded, the fleet saw them alien ships. Unlike anything they had ever seen before, their sleek, black shapes seemed to blend Into the darkness of space, they were fast, moving with deadly precision. The ships had appeared out of nowhere, as if they had materialized from thin air. "They've been waiting for us," Hayes muttered under his breath. As the fleet's ships scrambled to fight back, the alien vessels unleashed a barrage of energy blasts. The shields held for a moment, but the power behind the attacks was overwhelming. One of the ships in the fleet, the Tempest, took a direct hit, its hull exploding into a fireball. The ship was gone, swallowed by the cold vacuum of space. The battle had begun. The crew aboard the Valor watched in horror as the explosion rocked their ship. It was no longer just a mission to investigate the alien SOS, it was a fight for survival. The enemy was here, and they were ruthless. "Deploy the countermeasures," Hayes ordered. His voice steadied despite the chaos. "We can't lose any more ships. Engage the enemy with everything we've got," as the fleet fought for its life. The question remained, who were these aliens and why had they attacked? Was the SOS a trap? Or was this just the beginning of a much larger conflict? The fleet of doom had left Earth, but now it was facing a threat far greater than anyone could have imagined, and no one knew if any of them would survive to tell the tale. The encountered chaos of battle subsided, but the silence that followed felt like an eerie calm. The remaining ships in Earth's fleet, battered and broken, drifted through the cold vastness of space. The Valor was the last remaining ship in operational condition, and it had taken significant damage. Still, they pressed on. Their mission unchanged: find the source of the alien SOS. But now, the stakes had been raised. What had been a simple exploration mission had morphed into something far more dangerous. And the truth was still out there, just beyond their reach. Admiral Hayes stood in the command center of the Valor, staring out into the darkness of space. The battle had cost them dearly. The Tempest was gone, its crew lost to the vacuum of space. And the rest of the fleet had suffered heavy damage, yet they had survived, they had endured. "But for how long? We need to find them," Hayes muttered to himself, his voice low but resolute. "The aliens, the ones who attacked us, they must have answers, Admiral. We've pinpointed their location," Lieutenant Monroe called from her console, her eyes wide with unease. "It's not far from here, but there's something strange. The area around their ships, it's like nothing we've seen. There's an energy field, almost like a cloaking device, but much more advanced." Hayes nodded, his mind racing. The alien fleet had vanished after the initial barrage, disappearing into the depths of space as if they had never been there. Yet now, they were closer than ever. And the more he thought about it, the more questions swirled in his mind. Why had they attacked? What was their purpose? And most chilling of all, what did they want from humanity? "Ready the fleet," Hayes ordered. Though the Valor was all that remained, "We're going in. And we're going to find out the truth, no matter what." As the Valor approached the alien ship's last known location, the crew could feel the weight of the moment. The air on the ship was tense. Every man and woman aboard knew that they were about to face an alien force far more powerful than anything Earth had ever encountered. The battle had been only the beginning, but it had already changed everything suddenly. The ship lurched forward, and the crew was jolted from their seats. Monroe quickly adjusted the ship's controls, her face pale with concern. Here," she said, her voice strained. "Their ships are appearing again, but this time, they're surrounding us." The Valor was now completely surrounded by the alien vessels. They were unlike anything the crew had ever imagined. The ships were sleek and angular, their surfaces reflecting the dark expanse of space. There were no visible engines or weaponry, but Hayes knew better than to underestimate them. These ships had shown themselves to be capable of unimaginable destruction. A voice crackled through the comms, cutting through the silence. It wasn't the distorted, unintelligible signals they had encountered earlier. This time, the message was clear, though the language was completely unfamiliar. "We come for what is ours." The voice echoed. It was cold, mechanical, but there was a hint of emotion beneath the surface. "Anger, perhaps. Your planet, your species will serve us." The crew exchanged fearful glances. This was no longer about a simple misunderstanding. The aliens weren't seeking help, they had been preparing for war, and now they wanted Earth. Hayes stood tall in the command center, his fists clenched. The aliens were speaking in their language, but the meaning was clear. They were not here to make allies, they were here to conquer. Earth was in their sights. "We are not going to be your slaves," Hayes said through gritted teeth, his voice carrying the full weight of humanity's defiance. "We will fight you to the last." But as he spoke, something unexpected happened. The alien ships didn't respond with another barrage of fire. Instead, a massive ship, far larger than any they had seen, appeared from the shadows of the other vessels. It was unlike any craft Earth had ever encountered, shaped like a pyramid, with glowing lines running along its surface. It hovered in front of the Valor, almost as if it were studying them. A sudden realization hit Hayes like a thunderclap. These weren't just soldiers or invaders. They were something much older, more powerful. This was no ordinary enemy. They were a force that had existed long before humanity had even understood the concept of war. And now, they were ready to claim Earth as part of their empire. The voice came again, but this time, it was clearer, almost human. "We are the Nizair," it said. "We are the harbingers of destruction. You, humans, will join us or be wiped from existence." Hayes' mind raced. The Nizair, he had never heard of them. They were not a species he had encountered in any of the research Earth had done on alien civilizations. Yet here they were, with technology and power far beyond anything humanity had ever dreamed of. "They're demanding our submission," Monroe said, her voice barely a whisper. "They want Earth to join them, but if we refuse, they'll destroy us." Hayes finished for her, his mind made up. "We won't be their slaves, we'll fight them. But first, we need to understand them." As the massive Nizair ship continued to loom over them, Hayes knew that the battle for Earth's survival had only just begun. The aliens were not here to make peace, they were here to conquer, to dominate, and humanity would have to fight with everything they had if they were to survive. But what else was waiting beyond the veil of space? What other enemies lurked in the galaxy, watching this first encounter unfold? And what, exactly, did the Nizair want with Earth? Hayes stared out into the darkness, knowing that the answers to these questions would shape humanity's future. But one thing was certain: Earth's fate was now tied to the Nizair, whether they liked it or not. The war for survival had begun. The battle for Earth's future. Valor hovered in the emptiness of space, its engines powering down as it floated in front of the massive Nizair mothership. The alien vessels surrounding Earth's last remaining warship glowed ominously in the void. The silence was broken only by the soft hum of the ship's damaged systems and the steady breath of the crew as they braced for what was to come. Admiral Hayes stood at the command console, his eyes fixed on the vast screen in front of him. The Nizair's words still echoed in his mind: "You will join us or be wiped from existence." The choice seemed clear: submit to their rule or face annihilation. But something in the way the Nizair spoke nagged at Hayes. There was no arrogance in their voice, no sense of superiority, just cold, calculated intent. It was as if they had seen entire civilizations rise and fall before and simply didn't care. This wasn't just an invasion. It was a preordained event in their eyes, part of a cycle they had repeated across the stars. "Admiral," Monroe said, breaking his thoughts, "the Nizair are preparing to send us a communication." Hayes turned, his face grim. "Get it on the screen." The alien mothership's communications array flared to life. A holographic image of an alien figure appeared before them, a towering figure, its body encased in dark armor, its eyes glowing a cold, soulless blue. The figure exuded an overwhelming sense of power, as if it had seen the rise and fall of countless worlds. "We offer you the chance to submit." The alien's voice was amplified by a deep, mechanical undertone, but it still carried a strange, chilling sense of authority. "We have already seen the outcome of your resistance. It will be futile. You will join the Nizair, or your species will cease to exist." "Your time is over," Hayes replied, his voice unwavering. "We will never submit." The alien's expression seemed to shift ever so slightly, but it was hard to tell if it was amusement or anger. "You are but ants, humans. Your stubbornness will be your undoing. The Nizair do not negotiate. We conquer." The transmission cut off, and the Nizair ships began to move into position, their weapons charging. The crew of the Valor stood ready, adrenaline coursing through their veins. The Nizair were not bluffing, they were preparing for war. "All ships, prepare for combat." Hayes shouted, "We fight to survive. Remember, this is for Earth." A wave of energy shot from the Nizair mothership, followed by a barrage of smaller ships unleashing devastating firepower. The Valor's shields flared under the assault, the ship rocking with each impact. The other warships had been lost, but the Valor wasn't done yet. Despite the damage, despite the odds, it was still Earth's last hope. "We've taken damage," Monroe shouted as alarms blared throughout. "The ship shields are at 40%. Hull integrity is compromised." Hayes clenched his fists. He knew that if they didn't act quickly, the Valor would be destroyed just like the rest of the fleet. "Activate the secondary weapons systems. Prepare to launch the counterattack." The Nizair's ships closed in, firing relentlessly. The Valor fought back, unleashing everything they had. The ship's cannons roared as they returned fire, each blast a desperate attempt to hold the line. But the Nizair ships were faster, more advanced. Every time they struck, they caused massive damage. The Valor was buckling under the assault. "Admiral," one of the crew members called out, "there's a weak point in their formation. We can break through if we target their rear ships." Hayes didn't hesitate. "Do it." All power to the rear cannons. The Valor pivoted, maneuvering to position itself for a devastating counterstrike. The crew was fighting with everything they had, pushing their ship to the limits. But with every passing second, the situation grew worse. The Nizair ships were relentless. The battle was turning against them. We can't hold out much longer, Monroe said. Her voice strained. The shields are failing. We need a plan now. Hayes glanced around the command deck, the weight of his decisions pressing down on him. He knew they were outmatched. He knew they were losing, but giving up wasn't an option. Not when the fate of Earth was on the line. In that moment, Hayes made a decision that would change everything. Prepare the experimental warp drive. Hayes commanded, his voice calm but resolute. Admiral, Monroe said, we haven't tested it in combat yet. It's a risk. We might. I don't care about the risk. This is our only chance. The experimental warp drive had been designed as a last-ditch escape mechanism. It could fold space, allowing the ship to jump vast distances in an instant. It was dangerous and untested in battle. But if they could escape the Nizer long enough, they might find a way to regroup, to plan a counterattack. Activate it, Hayes ordered. Monroe hesitated for just a moment before she nodded and flipped the switches. The Valor's engines hummed and the ship shuddered as the warp drive powered up. The Nizer continued their assault, unaware of the drastic measure that Hayes was about to take. All hands, brace for impact, Monroe shouted. With a sudden, blinding flash of light, the Valor disappeared from the Nizer fleet, vanishing into the folds of space. The alien ships, caught off guard, continued firing at the empty void where the Valor had been moments before. For a brief moment, the Nizer stood still, confused, but they quickly recalibrated and began searching for the missing ship. The Valor had escaped, but the battle was far from over. The crew of the Valor had narrowly avoided destruction, but they had no illusions. This wasn't a victory, this was merely survival. The Nizer were still out there, and they weren't going to stop. Earth was at war, and humanity had just been thrust into a battle for survival on a scale they had never imagined. The crew stared into the endless black of space, knowing that the road ahead was uncertain. But one thing was clear, humanity would fight, and they would fight with everything they had. The fate of Earth and the entire galaxy depended on it. The aftermath, and a new threat. Valor had jumped into the unknown, vanishing from the Nizer fleet's sensors in a flash of light. The crew, stunned by their narrow escape, sat in the darkened command center, breathing heavily. The hum of the engines was the only sound as they drifted through the void. They had survived just barely, but at what cost? The fleet was shattered, and the war for Earth's future had only just begun. Admiral Hayes stood near the command console, staring at the starless expanse before him. His eyes were tired, yet resolute. The Valor had escaped, but they were far from safe. The Nizer were relentless, and the escape had been nothing more than a temporary reprieve. They were alone, stranded deep in uncharted space with only a single ship. There were no reinforcements, no backup, only a broken crew and a looming enemy. We've escaped the immediate danger, Hayes said, his voice steady but weary, but we won't be able to keep running forever. We need to find a way back to Earth, and we need answers. Who are the Nizer, and why are they targeting us, Lieutenant? Monroe, still sitting at her console, looked up. Admiral, our warp drive did what we needed it to. But we're now on the far edge of the galaxy. We've drifted far from Earth's position. We can't communicate with anyone, no signals, no messages. Nothing. Hayes let out a long sigh, rubbing his eyes. So, we're on our own. Yes, sir, Monroe replied, and I've been running scans, trying to find any signs of life. It's strange, there's nothing. The space around us is completely empty except for one thing, Hayes asked, his voice filled with curiosity. Monroe hesitated. I'm picking up faint signals, but they're not from the Nizer. They're from somewhere nearby. Something or someone is out there, but I don't know what. Let's investigate, Hayes said, his mind already racing through possibilities. Prepare the ship for another scan. We'll find out who or what is sending these signals. Maybe they can help us. As the crew moved into action, the tension was palpable. Every step they took was a step into the unknown. They had barely escaped with their lives, and now they were about to encounter something or someone new. The questions swirling in their minds were endless. Was it a new enemy, an ally, another alien race, or something even more dangerous? The uncertainty weighed heavily on everyone. Hours passed in silence as the Valor drifted toward the source of the signals. Hayes sat at the bridge, his hands folded in front of him, deep in thought. Every moment felt like an eternity. They had no idea what they were about to uncover. Suddenly, Monroe's voice broke through the stillness. Admiral, I think we found it. The crew gathered around as the screen flickered to life. At first, it appeared as though there was nothing there, just empty space, but then something materialized in the distance. It was small at first, but it quickly grew larger as the Valor approached. The object was unlike anything they had ever seen. It was a ship strange in shape, with surfaces that shimmered as if they were made of some liquid metal. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. What in the world is that? Monroe whispered, her voice filled with awe and fear. Hayes leaned forward. It doesn't look like a Nizair ship, and it doesn't match anything in our records. It's not from Earth, that's for sure. We should approach with caution, Lieutenant Monroe warned. We don't know if it's hostile, Hayes nodded. We don't have much choice, we're already close. Let's see if we can make contact. The Valor slowly moved closer, its engines humming softly as it edged toward the mysterious ship. As they drew nearer, the ship's surface seemed to pulse, almost alive. As if it were responding to their presence, a soft glow emanated from within. And the ship's shape seemed to shift in subtle ways. Like it was adjusting itself to their movements. Suddenly, a voice came through the comms. It was soft at first, like a whisper in the void, but then it became clearer. Humans, the voice said, its tone both ancient and wise. We have been waiting for you. The crew froze, unsure of what to make of the message. The voice was not from the Nizair, that much was certain, but who was it? And why had they been waiting for humanity? Who are you? Hayes asked, his voice steady but laced with caution. What do you want with us? The voice answered, its words filled with gravity. We are the Celestials. We are not your enemies. But we are not your allies either. We have watched your kind for eons, and now your fate is tied to the fate of the galaxy. The crew exchanged confused glances. The galaxy, Monroe asked, her voice trembling. What do you mean? The Nizair are not the only threat to your world, the voice continued. They are but one piece in a much larger game. There are forces at work in this galaxy, forces that will tear apart everything you know. You have no choice but to fight, or you will perish. The silence in the command center was deafening. The Celestials weren't offering help, they were offering knowledge. But with it came an undeniable warning. They were not the first threat humanity would face. The Nizair were only a precursor to something far more dangerous. How do you know all of this? Hayes asked, his voice cutting through the tension. What is the next step? You will find out soon enough, the voice replied cryptically. The galaxy is changing, and your place in it will soon be revealed. But know this, you are not alone, and your survival depends on the choices you make in the days to come. With that, the communication cut off, leaving the crew of the Valor in stunned silence. What had just happened? Who were the Celestials? And what had they meant by the galaxy changing? We need to prepare, Hayes finally said, his voice steady but filled with determination. The Nizair aren't the only ones watching us, and now we have a new mystery to solve. As the Valor drifted further into the dark unknown, the crew couldn't help but feel that their journey was only just beginning. The stakes were higher than ever, and the fate of humanity was more uncertain than it had ever been. But one thing was clear, they were no longer just fighting for survival, they were fighting for the future of the entire galaxy.